Good morning. Can't beat this Marine Corps sunshine, right? Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the honor to be here with you today on this Memorial Day to pay tribute to those who have fallen in the name of freedom. A day that has been celebrated since the first Memorial Day observance on May 5th, 1866 in Waterloo, New York. The Greek philosopher Thucydides once said, "The bravest are surely those who have the clearest vision of what's before them, and yet, notwithstanding, go out to meet it." Today we honor those service members who went out to meet our nation's foes and who gave so much while asking very little, and to say thank you for our freedom and thank you for making this the greatest nation ever formed. Since the establishment of the Continental Army under George Washington in 1775, 42 million Americans have served in our armed forces, and more than 1 million have died in their defense. Over 7,000 of these since September 11, 2001. Scores of cemeteries throughout the United States serve as the final resting places for our war dead. But today we also remember the 125,000 Americans interred in 24 permanent American burial grounds far beyond our borders, including throughout Europe, the Philippines, North Africa, Panama, and Mexico City. And we remember the more than 83,000 Americans still missing from World War II, Korea, Vietnam, the Cold War, the Gulf Wars, and other conflicts throughout the globe. Sadly, many of these final resting places are classified as unknown, lost in remote locations around the world, massed beneath the same soil upon which the service members fell in battle. Perhaps marked only by a few rocks, wild vegetation, or scattered aircraft wreckage. Over 41,000 of the missing are presumed lost at sea, many buried in the warplanes or the bellies of the U.S. ships that now serve as the steel tombs settled at the bottom of the world's vast seas and oceans. And while the remains of our missing may never be found for a myriad of reasons, we must never forget their sacrifices, however obscure the circumstances surrounding their deaths might be. We owe it to our fallen to exhaust every means at our disposal, to provide the fullest possible accounting for our missing personnel, and to return them to their families and to the nation to be buried with full military honors. This is the mission of the Department of Defense's POW MIA Accounting Agency, a mission that I am proud to have been part of from 2010 to 2012, during which time we were able to locate and repatriate 23 sets of American remains from Vietnam alone. Throughout our history, millions of men and women have found themselves serving on battlefields around the world, facing the unimaginable horrors unique to combat on our behalf. Many served because they were drafted during times of war, while others volunteered to take up arms simply because they believed it to be their patriotic duty. Regardless of why they joined, we must be grateful that there are still those out there who would give their lives, everything they have and everything they are, for us. Being grateful means honoring them, as we are doing today, but more importantly, showing our appreciation every day, not just on Memorial Day, by dedicating ourselves to the obligations that come with the freedoms and liberties for which they paid, by finding the courage in our own lives to make it a better world for our children and our grandchildren. Too often we remember, yet we do so little to show our appreciation. Many of you have heard folks comment that Memorial Day is not simply a national barbecue day or a meritorious day off to commemorate the beginning of summer. And while this is absolutely true, given the fact that we are recognizing our war dead, Memorial Day should not be a somber day of remembrance, but rather a respectful celebration. An appreciation that the summer ahead, the barbecues, the freedom from school, and the day off work were all purchased at a price for us. Some gave all so that we can enjoy these things and feel confident that others like them continue to stand watch so that we don't have to. So as you relish in these things, be ever aware and thankful to those who made them possible. This day is also one that should draw Americans closer together. And nowadays it seems more difficult to make this happen with all the political and ideological bickering that takes place. But like most of you, I saw in the weeks after September 11th how a nation once divided could come together. We were not just 50 states identified by a set of geographical borders. We were 50 United States under one flag, under one banner of solidarity and freedom. This renewed collective patriotism came on the heels of the worst attack on our soil in our nation's history, at a time when our citizens felt vulnerable, shocked by those whose aim was to infuse fear and terror in our lives and to crush our national identity. For a period, we stood strong as one nation under God, seemingly indivisible. And then sadly, the flags began to come back down. The political and ideological walls dividing our country's citizens formed once again, and the widespread sense of nationalism and appreciation for the sacrifices of our service members slowly began to fade. Too often nowadays, the daily sacrifices of our men and women in uniform are going unnoticed by a growing number of Americans, particularly our youth, who are influenced by the self-appointed elite class that defines pop music singers, mega movie stars, and professional sports celebrities as those who we should respect and emulate, as opposed to the real heroes who serve us all every day at great risk to their own lives and who lay down their lives for each of us. It's about time for the great citizens of our nation to come together again, raise those flags back up, and let's do all we can to repay our debt to those who have allowed us to live joyfully complacent from the tyranny and evildoers. Let's embrace every American service member that heads to foreign battlefields on our behalf to keep us safe, knowing full well that there's a chance that they may not return. And let us make it our mission to meet every flag-draped casket, those final resting quarters for our heroes, that comes home with a tearful eye and a sincere, thankful salute. When we hear the media outlets discussing combat casualties, the fallen nearly always are covered as statistics, simply numbers. But what we need to understand is that every one of those numbers has a name, and with every name, there's a story. On August 14, 2008, in Helmand Province, Afghanistan, a patrol from 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines was hit by improvised explosive devices that killed 3 Marines and seriously wounded a dozen more. The 3 killed in action were Lance Corporal Juan Lopez Castaneda, Lance Corporal Jacob Tovez, and Corporal Anthony Mahalo. One of the wounded Marines, Lance Corporal Brian Fisher, was medically evacuated to the British Shock Trauma Hospital at Camp Bastion, where he was treated for wounds sustained in the IED blast that killed his 3 friends. The battalion chaplain, Lieutenant Russ Hale, recalled an experience with Lance Corporal Fisher while with him at the hospital. He writes, "I went to the hospital to see Lance Corporal Fisher and had the unenviable task of sharing with him the names of the KIA from his platoon that were medevaced after him. Like any human, he broke down and began to weep at the loss of his friends and brothers in arms. We spoke for a bit about the loss and grief, and how these kinds of events are not something a person gets over, rather we get through. And with God's grace, we learn to cope in a healthy manner. And as our conversation turned toward ways to honor the loss of his friends and his own future, Lance Corporal Fisher floored me with his plans. I'm glad to be here at Bastion for a while before I go back to the field," he said. "This will give me time to process my re-enlistment paperwork, to stay in 2-7, and then I can return to my guys." Here is a Marine who just lost 3 of his friends, who could easily have been number 4 of the KIAs, and his way of honoring them was to re-enlist and to stay in the same battalion in order to return to the same place his friends were killed so that he can continue to carry the fight to the enemy. And what's most important is that his actions are not just an action of vengeance, but an act of love, a way to honor his comrades. He inspires me. Those words from Lieutenant Hale epitomize what Memorial Day is all about, and knowing that there are such great Americans out there defending our freedom at all costs should serve as a comfort to us all. But unfortunately, the story doesn't end there. We must never forget that there are families and friends who are forced to carry the burdens of the fallen loved ones every day. At the time of the incident in Afghanistan, I had just been assigned as the inspector instructor of the 4th Reconnaissance Battalion in Joliet, Illinois, less than 20 miles from Corporal Anthony Mahalo's hometown of Naperville. Corporal Mahalo is one of the 3 I mentioned who was killed that day in Afghanistan, and my unit was assigned the daunting responsibility of notifying the family of the incident, a family that we would meet for the first time only hours after the incident occurred. Now I'll tell you that the 2 casualty calls that I was assigned to carry out on behalf of the Marine Corps were easily the most difficult undertakings in my 23 years as a Marine. After anxiously awaiting what seemed like an eternity for the sun to come out up outside the family's house, I knew that eventually I had to ring that doorbell and deliver the news that would just devastate them all. But while I dreaded to be the one called on to carry out such notifications, I did my best, as so many others, to maintain the honor tied to this duty that we hold so sacred. Every casualty call is different, eliciting an array of responses by family members at the mere sight of the military uniformed personnel standing on their porch. They all know why you're there before a word is spoken. Some will collapse in a moment of overwhelming grief, while others will scream or yell or even outright deny that their loved one is gone, hoping perhaps to change what already is. And there are those, like Corporal Mahalo's family, and later, like Lance Corporal Cody Kruger's parents, who calmly welcomed me into their homes in a way that seemed as though they were trying to comfort me, all the while emotionally shattered. Think about how they will never feel the embrace of their loved one again. In the end, however, regardless of the reaction, the result of every casualty call is essentially the same. Another family is blindsided by an incurable grief for the loss of a loved one that never wanes, even with the passage of time. I soon found out there was just no way to convey such news that would ease the pain or comfort the family members. And now looking back, I battled a little more with the idea that I was so selfish, so self-centered, worrying about how difficult it was for me, notifying a family that will never again see their son, their brother, their fiancé. Yes, I lost a brother in arms, but I had never met Corporal Mahalo or Lance Corporal Kruger. After the initial notification to the parents of Corporal Mahalo, I had to return once again to discuss the details of his transfer back to the United States and for the funeral. During that second visit, I remember having to inform Mahalo's family that due to the severity of the circumstances surrounding his death, there could be no open casket before the funeral. News like this has a way of making a devastating situation even worse. Then standing up from the dining room table at the end of the visit, and once again doing everything in my power to dam up my tears, I looked his mom in the eye and thanked her for her son's sacrifice. Seeing that I was about to lose it, she reached out and hugged me, just long enough for me to regain my composure. How amazing it was that she consoled me. In her anguish, she acted in a way that would have made her son proud. That would have validated his sacrifice. Then during the final memorial service came the final roll call. I'm sorry. The portion of the service that marks the permanency of the loss. Corporal Mahalo. Corporal Anthony Mahalo. Corporal Anthony G. Mahalo. Corporal Anthony Mahalo, 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines. Killed in action August 14, 2008. Helmand Province, Afghanistan. Since 1917, service banners have been displayed for families to honor family members serving in the armed forces during times of war and hostilities. Service banners depicting gold stars represent members who have died during service. And whenever possible, we should continue to recognize and embrace these Gold Star families. Those who endured the inevitable pain and suffering that accompanies the loss of their loved ones during wartime. But Memorial Day is not for Gold Star families like that of Corporal Mahalo. They don't need a day to remember, since they remember every day from the time they wake up until the time they fall asleep. These memories never, ever go away. The Gold Star family should be proud of their loved ones' willingness to serve, their courage to fight, and the perpetual honor they demonstrated, representing a nation that depends on them, whether knowingly or unknowingly. Many of these Gold Star families might ask themselves, was it worth it? Did my loved one make a difference? I can assure those families that their loved ones did make a difference, and we are grateful for it. But was it worth it? That is not for any of us to decide. Only the fallen can speak to that, since at some point between birth and the moment they died, Each of these fine men and women accepted their duty to serve a cause greater than themselves. But if I had to guess, I would say that they would sound like so many of our battle-wounded warriors who, without batting an eye, say that they would do it all again. These families should also take comfort in the fact that when their heroes fell, they were not alone. They were with the finest men and women on this earth, and I'm certain that in his infinite wisdom and glory, God welcomed the souls to join him, while their military brothers and sisters lovingly and reverently accompanied them on their final journeys home. Today we honor and remember all those who have willingly gone into the darkest, most dangerous corners of the world to hunt down and to kill those who aim to do us harm. We pray that all our war dead rest in eternal peace, and may we all live lives that are worthy of their sacrifice. I'll end today with the words of poet John Maxwell Edmonds. Went the war well, we died and never knew, but well or ill, freedom, we died for you. When you go home, tell them of us and say, for your tomorrow, we gave our today. Thank you all. May God bless this great nation of ours, and especially all of those who gave everything, whose legacy is our freedom. God bless.